Let's cut right to it. Welcome to a Critical Explainer and Code Ninja Security Advisory. I'm issuing this emergency briefing right now because of a catastrophic cPanel zero-day we're tracking as CVE 2026-41940. Look, this is absolutely not a drill. If you're managing any shared hosting infrastructure, you need to drop what you're doing and pay attention. We are actively facing a crisis at the management plane of the internet itself.
We're talking about a CVSS 9.8. It's a critical vulnerability that is currently threatening the management plan of literally over 70 million domains worldwide. I mean, think about it. When 94% of the entire web control panel market relies on just one single vendor, a flaw of this magnitude, it isn't just a simple bug. It's a massive, systemic threat to global internet infrastructure. So what's our objective here? My goal today is to give you the unvarnished technical truth, deliver immediate mitigation steps to help force those vendor patches, and ultimately protect your perimeter. We practice coordinated vulnerability disclosure specifically to arm you with the real-time intel you need to defend your networks before they get completely overrun. Tracking the timeline on this threat, we're seeing a really concerning sequence of events. Active, silent zero-day exploitation actually started in the wild way back in February 2026. Then, by mid-April, confidential reports started rolling in, but they were initially met with vendor denial. Obviously, this escalated into a massive public crisis, which forced emergency patches on April 28th and finally led to a CISA Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog edition by April 30th. The threat actors didn't sit around waiting for a patch, and honestly, neither can we.
Moving right into Phase 2, Secure Comms Check.
Before we dig deep into the technicals, let's establish our link. Go ahead and instruct your terminals to subscribe to @cybertech79 and make sure you enable those notifications. Look at this as a core security necessity, because it really is. When 0 days drop out of nowhere, having real-time intelligence is exactly what makes the difference between maintaining a secure perimeter and suffering a total breach.
Also, please hit that like button. Consider this your formal acknowledgement of receipt for this critical intelligence. It essentially signals to the algorithm and to the wider InfoSec community that this advisory is active, verified, and needs visibility.
And finally, for the comms check, drop a quick comment with your current status. Are you patched or are you still vulnerable? We're actively using this data right now to help gauge the global blast radius of this thread. Plus, let us know what anomalies you're actually seeing in your own logs.
All right, Phase 3, Threat Protocol Deep Dive. Let's get into the weeds.
The actual impact here, the blast radius, is just devastating. We are talking about attackers gaining unauthenticated root access, which immediately enables remote code execution and a complete, total takeover of your web host manager, or WHM interface. Once they're in, they literally have the keys to the kingdom. They can steal databases, modified hosted websites, and even deploy web shells and ransomware across your entire client base. It's a nightmare scenario. Now, the core weakness driving this whole exploit is CWE 306. That's Missing Authentication for a critical function. Specifically, this flaw allows completely unauthenticated remote attackers to just bypass the login flow entirely in cPanel and WHM versions released anytime after 11.40.
The way attackers pull this off is through a really pristine, highly effective 4-stage exploit chain. First up, they mint a pre-authentication session. Then they inject CRLF, so carriage return line feed sequences, straight through the HTTP authorization header. This malicious payload then writes directly to the raw session file right there on the disk. And for the final move, they use a specific gadget to flush that raw, poisoned data directly into the trusted JSON cache.
If we break down the logic comparison, the flaw becomes incredibly obvious. The vulnerable cpsrvd daemon actually calls the save function before it ever runs its sanitization filter. So it just takes your raw, attacker-controlled header, carriage returns and all, and writes it straight to the disk. The patch logic, on the other hand, is super simple. It just moves the filter_session data function inside the save function, guaranteeing that all inputs are scrubbed clean before they ever even touch the file system.
But you know, the attacker's ingenuity around the encryption piece is what makes this truly dangerous. cPanel normally tries to symmetrically encode session passwords so they aren't just sitting there in plain text. But these attackers figured out how to manipulate the session cookie to just drop the hex key segment entirely. By passing an empty key, the encryption routine basically never fires. That ensures their injected payload, like user equals root, is written straight to the session file in completely plain readable text.
But wait, there's a catch. Even with that malicious payload sitting right there on the disk, the system normally reads from a JSON cache, not the raw file. So how on earth do the attackers promote their payload? Well, by hitting an endpoint without a security token, they intentionally trigger the do.token-denied gadget. This clever move forces the system to read the raw text file, parse out their injected top-level keys, and save the whole manipulated mess back into the JSON cache. And just like that, boom, the system genuinely believes a fully authenticated root user is logged in.
Moving on to the patch and actionable mitigation.
This is the most crucial part. You absolutely must forcefully update your systems to these specific patched versions immediately. It doesn't matter if you're on the 110 track or all the way up to 136, you need to run the cPanel update script, manually verify your build version, and crucially, execute a hard restart of your cPanel cpsrvd service. Please, whatever you do, do not just assume your automated updates caught this, especially if you've pinned your configurations in the past.
Now, if you're in a spot where you cannot update your system immediately, maybe you're running some unsupported legacy version, you have to deploy these temporary mitigations right now. Go to your Edge firewall and block inbound traffic on ports 2083, 2087, 2095, and 2096. If you can't do that, then completely stop the cpsrvd and cpdavid services. Also, make sure you're utilizing the detection scripts provided by TrendMicro and cPanel to scan your raw session directories for any indicators of compromise.
Phase 4, Disclosure Ethics and Sign-Off.
Look, we practice this kind of explicit disclosure because, to put it simply, users need to know the technical truth to protect their own systems. When a vendor initially denies an issue or delays their communication, it creates this massive, catastrophic window of opportunity for threat actors. By breaking down the exact mechanics of the exploit for you here, we are taking the advantage away from the attackers and handing it right back to you, the defenders.
So, as you go out and implement these fixes across your fleet today, I really want you to take a hard look at your overarching security posture. Are you relying on a single point of failure? Or are you actually utilizing preemptive exposure management and active defense protocols at your network edge?
All right, that's going to wrap up this explainer and Code Ninja Security Advisory. Go execute your patches, closely monitor your perimeters, and make sure you share this intelligence with your teams immediately. Ultimately, you have to ask yourself, are you just endlessly reacting to the latest 0-day, or is your infrastructure truly hardened for whatever inevitably drops tomorrow? Until then, stay secure.